If you're building some kind of customer support or ticket system, you need to give both your users who will be submitting tickets a solid UI in which they can describe their problem. So for example, here I can say john@gmail.com, pay button. And then here I have the Froala text editor. They are also sponsoring this video because they have a great solution for this type of context. Hello, when I click pay button, nothing happened. Please tell me what. So now John here is going to submit this ticket and we're going to store that in a database, right? So this is the user facing side. Now on the other side, we need to have a UI where we can see all the created tickets. So you can see I have 2 tickets here. I was already preparing this video. So the second one is the one that we just created, right? So now a customer support agent can click on some tickets. And now here they can see the ticket title, but then also the actual content of the ticket. And then of course we want to give a customer agent also a solid editor to write a response, right? So here again we have the Froala editor and it's very powerful, right? So it has been around for a long time, right? All the basic text editing is in here. We can configure everything here. I'll show you how it works in a second. Now for customer support, it's very important that both the user as well as the agent can attach screenshots or maybe even video to show what the problem is or how to solve it. Right, and I can add images here. I can pick one image I have here and you can see it's nicely added here. I can align this however I like. I can add alt text and change the size also by just holding it like this. So images are fully supported here. So users can have screenshots, right? We can insert links to link to some article from our knowledge base, let's say. We can add lists, pretty much anything you need to have a robust customer support system, right? We can easily get the HTML out of this text here, whatever the customer agent wrote. We can get the HTML and then we can add that to a knowledge base, let's say, right? So I will quickly show you how to build this project so you have a good starting point for a customer support system. I will leave the final code in the description because I don't want to make this a 2-hour long tutorial. I will quickly go through the main steps in a modern Next.js application, but will work very similarly in React Feed or any other web framework you may be using. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new Next.js project. I'm using Next.js because we have some backend functionality as well that we'll take a look at. I'll just take the latest and I want to install it in the current directory. I will say yes everywhere. Okay, and then let's actually run this. Okay, and then here, let me refresh. So now we have a standard Next.js boilerplate. I'm going to delete a bunch of stuff. So here in my CSS file, I'm going to delete all this stuff, but keep the tailwind. And on the homepage, I'm going to replace all of this with just this get support here, and that's just going to be the homepage. So let's imagine a user needs support and they should be able to click on this link, go to /support, and here is where we want to have this page where they can actually fill out this text area here. So let's create a page for that route. So here in the app router, you just create a folder and then a page.tsx file. So this would be the initial markup. This is what we have now. But what we want, of course, is the following. So we have create a ticket, and then below there we actually want to have 2 inputs here, and I actually want to use Shadcn-UI for these 2 inputs. So I'm going to open my terminal. So here I can just say the following to initialize Shadcn. I will use the New York style and I will use zinc. And then the way it works is if you want to add an input or other component, you have to add it. You can add it like this. Okay, so now it has added these components here in the UI folder here. So here we can add them. I will import them from my own folder here, and then we have these 2. So now we need a text area where the user can actually write out their issue. Traditionally, maybe you could try doing it yourself, right? With a text area, right? So here you could then allow your users to type. You can style this. Now this is going to be a lot of work because you want to allow your users to style the text, make certain things bold, right? Even basic text formatting is going to be a hassle, but users should also add images or other attachments, right? They can have a screenshot of something that went wrong, right? And many more things. So we want to use a more sophisticated solution, battle tested solution, and that is of course Froala, right? So we're going to use the Froala editor here. So we need to install Froala, the React bindings. I will also install the Froala editor itself, and then also Font Awesome, right? So let me install those 3 packages. Okay, so I installed the Froala editor. Now how do I get it here on the page? Well, we can replace this with Froala, and we can import this from React, from the React bindings here. Now what should this render in the HTML? We still want to get a text area in the HTML. Let me save here. Now we're going to get an issue here. Refresh here. Froala is using the window object under the hood, and that's only possible if it runs in the browser, right? I'm using Next.js here, so this will run on the server initially as well. So in the world of Next.js, if you want to make sure that a component only runs in the browser, we can use the dynamic function in Next.js. And here I'm importing the Froala editor, but I'm also importing all of the plugins that come with Froala. Right? So Froala is actually very lean. Right? So Froala improves their performance because not all the plugins are included by default. So it's very lean, very performant. So you really have to opt into the plugins that you want to use. Now here I'm importing all of them. They just have to be included in the file somewhere. And here I'm saying that it should not be server-side rendered. Right? So then I can use this variable name instead of this. Okay, now there's one more issue, which seems to be due to how Froala under the hood has packaged this. We also have to make this a client component. Okay, typically not something you want to do for the whole page. We could refactor this into a separate component, but let's keep it a little bit simple here. Okay, and then we have Froala, but we don't have the stylings yet. So here we can also see the CSS files that should be included here. So let me actually add that here as well. And now if we go back, you can see we have the Froala editor here on the page. Now it's much easier for the user to style the text, manipulate this, and most importantly also to add files or images, right? So users will have screenshots that they want to share. Before we take a look at that, let's see how we can actually configure this, because we can change anything we want here. All this entire toolbar here, we can change the order of these buttons. We can decide which buttons to include, which one should be removed. And by default, we have a lot here because we are including all of the, and as soon as you just import that, it will automatically be applied to the editor on the page as well. Word count and character count, right? But you can also see that it's actually already pretty powerful. Now we just need to configure it to make it look and behave exactly like we want. Okay, so to customize this, we can specify the options for the Froala editor. Let me actually close this. So here we can say we want some options. It's going to be some object, and let's actually define that up here to keep it a little bit clean. So here we can say Froala options, and it will just be an object. Now, how do we know all the options are available? Well, they have documentation on this. You can see how many options there are, right? Placeholder text, tab spaces, spell check, font sizes, right? So many options. But let me show you a configuration that makes sense for a customer support context. Okay, so here I just added a bunch of options. So very quickly, so a minimum height, some placeholder text. I'm removing those counts from here. We're going to remove those. And actually what I'm doing here is rearranging the buttons, right? So their order, how they're aligned. We can arrange all of that. So let me actually apply this now to the editor. I'm going to apply that right here. And it should actually be called config. So I'm going to call it config. Okay, let's actually see what we get. All right, so now you can see it looks much cleaner and it takes up more space. Now maybe it's a little bit too much. Let me reduce the height minimum here to 175. Right, so this looks much cleaner and we have all of the basic text editing available here, right? Text color, background color. Now most importantly, of course, we want to allow users to upload images or maybe even video or other files, insert links perhaps. And actually, how do I know what is available here? So here, if I use IntelliSense, we don't get any IntelliSense here. And it would be nice if we know what options are available and which options aren't, right? So if I just provide some gibberish here, I should get a warning because this isn't a valid option. So actually Froala provides a type. So we can use Froala option. Okay, we can import that from Froala editor. Now let's actually open this up. I'm going to click command click. So here we see a bunch of properties that should be part of an object. These are mandatory, but here we don't want to specify all of them. It should just be some subsection of them. So we're going to say this is partial, right? So now if we do this, I have removed that. Now the one other issue here is at the bottom of this big type, we have key string is any. If we comment that out, we now also get type safety here. So if there's actually a problem, right? So now if I make a mistake and I add some gibberish here, I get a warning here, right? So now I can fix my mistake. All right, now it actually gives me a warning here for this one, but I actually think it's correct because you can see the word counter that we had before is gone. So I think this one is actually correct. So I will leave it like that. And actually, before I show you how to work with images, let's just actually make sure that we can submit this and actually store it in a database. How do we even get the content out of here again? So let me actually add a submit button. So let me actually add a submit button and I'm going to use Shadcn for that again. So I'm just going to paste that right here, add button. Okay, it's gonna add the button. Now I can go all the way here. And now I will add the button right here. I will make sure to import it from my own file and that should give us a submit button. Okay, so now a user has a problem, they have described the problem in here, right? They may have made some parts bigger. They may have attached images. We'll take a look at it in a second. They may have attached links as well. When we submit now, how do we get the actual content from there? Well, Froala recommends that you use the model here. So we're going to make this a controlled component by using useState. So we already have useClient there, so that shouldn't be an issue. We can call that Froala HTML. That's what you're going to get, right? It's all going to be in HTML, basically a string. Here, that's what we're going to keep track of, right? So the model will be whatever the Froala HTML is, and to update that, initially it's going to be an empty string, and then on every update we're going to set the state here with on model change, right? So we're just making it a controlled component, pretty typical in React, right? So just to show you what we're going to get, I'm going to log the Froala HTML. If I add some gibberish here and I style this, maybe some more thing, okay, I'm going to open up my console here, and here you can see I'm getting the content from the editor as HTML here, right? So this also helps us later when we want to display this in another place, as we'll see. All right, so when we click here the button, this is all in a form, so this will be submitted. Now we could use on submit, right? This is traditionally how you would do it. However, in Next.js, we have a new paradigm, server actions, which is the more idiomatic way of doing this. So here what we are doing is we're creating a ticket. So we're going to create a server action for creating a ticket, right? So the form data will be submitted to create ticket. And actually, let me write it a little bit differently here. So with the action here, we're going to get the form data right here as an input. And then here we can invoke a server action that we still have to create, right? Create ticket. And we need to pass the actual data from the form here. So we're going to pass the actual email. Right, that's from this input, that's from this input. We're going to say form data dot get email, and then also subject, and then the actual content, right? So that's going to be from Froala, it's going to be the HTML. Okay, now we did not create ticket yet. So I like to create a separate folder here for all my actions, and let's create a file called actions.ts. Now here we need to add use server at the top, so it will only run on the server. And then what we want to have is these 3 input, and let's actually log this. If I want to see the log, I need to open up my terminal because this runs on the server. And now here, I do need to make sure I'm importing that. We can ignore the TypeScript for now, that's not a big issue. All right, so now if I'm logging this here, I need to open up my terminal because this runs on the server, right? So now if I submit the form, we should be able to log this on the server. Let's actually try that out. john@gmail.com, test2. Okay, now I'm gonna click submit, and yes, I'm getting all the data here, right? So now we can actually insert this into a database. So let's quickly add a database, very easy to do with Prisma. So I'm gonna install Prisma as a dev dependency, and then I can just initialize. I can say init, and let's actually create a SQLite database. It's a bit easier to set that up. So I'll say data source provider is going to be SQLite. Okay, so then we have some new files here. As you can see, we have Prisma here with a schema. So this is some database configuration essentially. Here we want to have a model that will describe the table in our database. So we're going to have a ticket that has an ID. It should have some email, subject, and content, and we'll also keep track of created at and updated at. So this is how we want our database to look like, but right now we don't even have a database. So what we can do now is we can say npx prisma db push. We can do that after every time the schema changes. The first time we do it here, it will also create the database for us, right? So you can see now, once that is finished, if I now open this up, you can see we have a database right here, SQLite, okay? So now we can go to our server action and we can insert this data in the database. So here we can remove this. We can replace this with the Prisma client. So we want to do prisma.ticket.create and then the actual data that we have submitted to the server. Now I want to use the Prisma client here, and Prisma has a recommended way of instantiating that client. So what we're going to do here, we have lib here from Shadcn. I'm also going to create a db.ts file here, and I'm going to paste that right here. This is what Prisma in the documentation right here. Actually, if you Google for Next.js Prisma instantiation, this is a pretty common snippet you'll run into. And this is how I recommend that you instantiate it, right? So it will just assign it to the global object essentially. Then we can just import it from our lib like this. Now, if we want to see what's going on in our database, we can then also use npx prisma studio, which will show us what's in the database. So let me actually add that here as well. Currently, it's still empty, but you can see the columns here are already created. Now let's actually try adding the ticket to the database again. I'm gonna press submit again. Okay, I click there. Let's actually refresh our database. And you can see now we have our database here, including the Froala content in this column. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about images because these are very important. So if I add that image again, let's take a look. So here in this image, let's say, hello, I have a problem. I attack doing what's wrong. Right, they have attached some image. I'm just using my own image here. How would we save this though? Because here with the HTML, we're just going to get an image with some local URL. Right, this image is not hosted anywhere right now. So Froala actually also offers SDKs. So they have an SDK for Node.js, which is something we could try using in Next.js as well. And here they help you out with uploading your images to a server. Right, so here they have some utilities here. So we can specify that during submitting the form, where should Froala send that image to on the server side. So we could specify here in the config options the image upload URL. Right, so here we could create an API route handler. If we take a look here, you can see Froala can take the incoming request, and then you can see here that they show you in an Express example, but it's very similar in any framework, but in Next.js it's even closer. So here you can then use FroalaEditor.image.upload. It can take that incoming request and it can actually write that as a file in the file system on the server side, right? So that's something that you may want to take a look at. All right, so this is the customer facing side, right? And we have stored one ticket now in the database. Now we of course also need a page where we can see all the tickets. So a customer support agent can actually go through them and answer them. So let me close here. I'm going to create a new page here. We'll call that ticket, and that will be another page.tsx. Okay, it's going to look like this. So let's actually go there and let me show you what it looks like. All right, so now here we have tickets, right? Just an H1 here, tickets. That's what we see here. And then here we have this entire UL actually is just going to be a list. Where do I get the tickets from? Well, I'm using the Prisma client again to get all the tickets from my database. Right now we just have one. We just have this one with a subject of test. So that's what we see here, test, right? So here what we render is actually the name of the ticket, the subject. And also we are linking to tickets / their ID, right? So now we want to see the content of the ticket, right? You would have a list of all tickets, and now the content, you actually have to click on this. And now here we would like to display the actual content, right? This is dynamic route as it's called. So let's also create a page for that. That's the last one. Right, with square brackets because it's dynamic, and another page.tsx. All right, so here what we're doing on this page is when we go to /1 or 2, write some ID in the URL, we need to know which ID is in the URL. So we get that as params. Based on that, we can get the actual content of that particular ticket. So we can use Prisma like that. So then let me actually show you. So here, test. Now we see ticket, and then the actual subject here as the H1. So then here in the section below here, we will have, well, what we would like to do actually above this border here, we would like to show the actual content of that ticket. And Froala actually has a separate component to actually view the actual HTML like that. So it actually is properly rendered. Right, so that's what I'm going to add up here. And so Froala offers the FroalaEditorView component as well. If you actually want to render the content of some Froala editor on the page, this is what we can use. Now here I will need to make it a use client. Again, we'll need it later anyway, because we will add the actual editor as well. Now here we will get into an issue because this also uses the window object. So here what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to create in my components here, I'm going to create a Froala editor view component, which will just add use client and then export it again, right? This is an easy way of adding use client to an external component. Then I can just import it from here. So here I need to remove it from here, and then we can import it from our own component like this. All right, so now you can see we are rendering that content on the page with the same styling that has been embedded here in the HTML. Right, so we are now properly rendering this. And let's actually add a more interesting example. Let's say John has not a problem. John can't click the pay button. Please let me know how to fix this. Okay, so we're gonna submit this and insert that into our database as well. Let's see if that succeeded. Yeah, so now we have a more interesting example here. We would have a customer support agent, and they would have this overview of tickets. So here we have another one now, can't click the pay button. Yeah, so now you can see this is a ticket with this title and this content, right? Looks pretty clean. Now here we would like to render another Froala editor component so the customer support agent can actually type. And we might as well just use the same editor as we were using for the user facing side, right? So here we would like to show the same one here. We would like to take this one and also show that right here for the agent. So we want to add the Froala editor here on top of the button here. Now previously in the support page, we were doing it like this. We could do something like this. We can also create a separate component, what we did here for the editor view as well. I can actually just call it Froala editor or something like this. And then here I can put all of that import stuff in one file. And now if I want to use that, I can just say Froala editor components from my own component now. And we want to have a text area tag again. And for the config, I actually want to use the same option so that it looks the same, behaves the same. So we do need to make sure that we are so we need to export these options from this file. And then here I will import it like this. And then finally here we have a nice text editor also for the customer support agent, right? So customer support agent also wants basic editing for the text, but also very important for customer support is they need to be able to add images, right? Because they need to be able to add images because they want to explain to the user where to click something. And also they should be able to add links because they may want to link to a particular article in the knowledge base, right? Maybe even a PDF file or something like that, right? So very powerful editor. Right? So if you're building some kind of customer support system or even a knowledge base, I highly recommend you check out Froala. Very powerful editor, battle tested, has been around for a long time. I had a great time working with it so far. So I want to thank Froala for sponsoring this video. I want to thank you for watching and I hope to see you in the next one.